So I'm curious to maybe address a question to the two architects on the panel, the practitioners. All of what's been discussed heretofore has been designed around attracting your attention, making your lives ideally a little easier, and then obviously landing a specification and hopefully convincing you to use a product that's available from vitro. So how much of your own work life and workflow do you see reflected back to you in the processes that we've seen mapped out here?
Tom said some very interesting things, and it is absolutely true that the websites are really important. And just a personal note, I got a call Monday morning, and we had to make a change on a product, and the guy, my project designer on it, could not find. We had to change the size of something. You'd think that's really simple, right? Yeah. He couldn't find the site. I couldn't find the sizes on that site. Two other people couldn't find it. Even the product rep, local, couldn't find it. Had to go to his manual on his shelf. So, now that's a project that's in work. But had that been in the specification, somebody would, gone to the next product. That's, I think, so. The web page. You just can't spend enough time making those things user-friendly. The other thing is the value of things like this. We come to events like this, and you may not know it, but there's a lot of people, including people from our firm, who don't come for any of the educational events. They're cruising this hall. I just saw a guy go by with a roller bag. I know what's in that roller bag. It's full of the product literature. So I think that's really important. The other thing I think that's important is to know who's making the decisions, and maybe that was implicit, Tom, in your slides, but who's making the decisions at what point in the process. I lead the architectural design of the projects that I work on. There are some products that I absolutely will be either make the decision myself or be highly involved in. Then there are precision. Jason does a lot of interiors that other people on the team, as the project moves forward into more and more detail, will make the decisions. Rarely will the specification writer make a huge number of decisions. We'll rely on them for, at least I do, for roofing, insulation systems, things like that. So I think that's an important point. Understand who is making those decisions all the way along the road. The other thing I think that none of you all touched on, and actually I didn't know about in vitro. I mean, I know the country. I didn't realize the purchase. We have a very large. We're a large global firm. We do work all over the world. We have a major project overseas in Europe that's about to go to bid. The owner and the owner's rep gave us a directive that to take every single American-made product, the products come from all over the world, and come up with an alternate they were going to give to the bidders. They'll all be EU bidders, because they're fearful of kind of and in my view, the totally irresponsible, wandering in the wood on trade policy. Well, they don't. If this project gets out to bid and that gets caught up in that, they don't want to get caught in that. So they're going to take another path. So somehow you all, I can see that what we will start doing is asking, where's that product made? Because we're not going to get caught in the trade war either. So
interesting. Jason, how about you? Do you kind of see similar things?
Yeah, I kind of echo what Bill had to say. I agree that the website is really important, and I'm really surprised, like Bill, how often I go to a website and the content's not there. And I think it seems like a lot of manufacturers, and this may not be true, but I feel like they want it to kind of be a little bit sparse, so that I will reach out to them and put in contact with a person, which I love to meet with reps, but my time is really short. And a lot of times at the beginning of a job, we're trying to evaluate what's the best product, and we're looking at like 6 to 10 different products to try to figure out what may be the best solution for the job. And so at that point in time, we're not ready to speak to a person, because that's a half an hour to a 45-minute commitment.
Yes.
We just need a quick look into 7 different products, and then we choose down to the top 3 we want to get into, and then we invite the rep in. So if that information isn't right there on the website and I can't find it, or my team can't find it in a 15-minute search, we move on to a different website and we forget about you. And so it's really important that that website is up to date. And I really like the idea that you put in about how you're looking at specification along the path of a project by phase. I think that was really, really helpful, especially as I'm trying to mentor younger architects and try to get them to start looking at products. And I like to direct them vaguely into here's some manufacturers that we've used in the past. Go ahead and take a look, cull it out yourself. So you're also helping me mentor the next generation, which I thought was really kind of fantastic as you're showing them how to look at things along the path of a project by phase.
And that whole notion that it seems that Hanley Wood and Pipitone and Vitro PPG have identified, and that you spoke to a little bit, Bill, the role of the specifier. 20 years ago, when I was a product editor at Architecture Magazine, the conversation was really focused around the specifier as an individual, kind of unique job role. And it seems that the research that you've done has acknowledged what the architects on the panel can say is true or not. But what seems to me an increasing reality that there is no single individual at any firm who's responsible for a spec, that it's a pretty complex ecosystem.
I'm going to see if this makes sense to you, but just off the top, I would think that our spec writers, phenomenal spec writers, I would be surprised if the products that they personally make a decision on without talking to anybody else, it's less than 20%.
Wow. Yeah.
Well,
And the other 80% is something that Jason is designated, or I've designated, or somebody's designated, and said, we're going to use that.
Well, and also you got to look at the different firm sizes.
Right.
Bill and I both work for really large firms, so we have those specification writers in-house who are helping us with that 25%. But when you're in a firm of less than 10 people, that's a really different dynamic.
Yes.
So there is some differences depending on the scale of the firm, on who's making those choices. Having started in a very small firm of less than 10 people, sometimes there is just one guy making that choice.
Right.
And there's a different dynamic with that one individual versus our offices, which are a couple hundred people just in our office, but we have a global footprint. So.
Yeah, and Ned, I'll add that when we have that database of different architects, within your firm there, we're constantly trying to sort out who the specifier is, who that decision maker is, and we understand that it's different in
Good
the
luck.
process.
Because sometimes it's hard for us to know because projects are so big and complex that sometimes they're not just in our office. Sometimes we're teaming up with other offices, and they may be people across the globe somewhere also specifying a part of that product.
Well, and part of it is we do lead scoring throughout this, and so there's a likely candidate, and we can watch, for instance, for one of our other customers, they were looking at a certain page for the washroom. They disappeared for about 6 months, 7 months, and then they came back with a different type of request there. So we kind of figure out that might be that specifier or that person there, but we also know that there's that gap in between that 6 or 7 months. Had a project then, now has another project, so it puts a little queue up for us to be able to, maybe there's now time to have a conversation with either the rep or the salesperson.
So back to what Jason was saying, here's a typical situation where we do use a specifier. We will say, okay, these 4 products look to be about okay for what we want to do, performance, or not performance. You research those for us, get into the material data sheets, get into the embodied energy and all that stuff, and then make a recommendation back to us. And if he, in this case it's a he, I'm thinking of, if he can't find that information fairly quickly, he's not going to spend hours and hours on it. That's just off the table. It's on to the next one.
Right.
So I was fascinated, actually, and I'm sorry Tom had to leave for another meeting, but at the very beginning of the session, he put up a slide that referred to the volume of electronic engagement. I think he used Amazon as an example. Obviously, we're not talking about a kind of traditional conventional retail scenario. We're talking about a specification, which is very different. But it does seem to me, and Jason, what you were saying earlier, I think kind of highlighted this, that human interaction, kind of actual human interaction, is happening much, much further down the road. Kim, is that kind of what you've been your experience?
Yeah, I think that's exactly what we've heard
Yeah.
from the manufacturers that we work with. And so this is where we're trying to help them, keep people engaged all the way through the process as long as we can until they're ready. Make it easy for them to find, first of all, because we don't want to lose them, because we know that if they can't find it quickly and easily, and if they can't find okay, so maybe I found the information, but if it's not in a usable format to me, then I'm also not interested. I'm done. You're no use to me, and so goodbye. I'll find somebody else. So we're very conscious of trying to make sure that information is organized in a way that, one, it's easy to find, two, it's easy to use, and throughout the process, make sure that no matter where they are, they have that access to whatever they need at the time that they need it, because it doesn't matter whether they're at the design phase or the bidding phase. If they can't find what they need, they're done and on to somebody else. So, but we always have that link, the phone number, and an email to reach out if they need it, but they're not likely to at that stage, as you said, until they're much further down the process, made their decisions or almost made their decisions and really ready to call a rep in. And so we've heard that from a number of manufacturers, and that's why this is so much more important today, maybe than it was in years past. It's one thing to build a website. It's another thing to make a good website that, suits your audience. So.
And I just wanted to make a comment. When we have a project that we're actively engaged in and designing, that's that process. There is an aspect of we constantly need to be reminded of the new products and what's out there. That's always going on in our firms. And so having that personal connection of you guys coming in and presenting something, even though it's not right for a project we are working on now, but it puts that idea in the back of our head to say, hey, there is a cool glazing product out there. I need to file that away somewhere and pull that back out when it's appropriate for a project that I'm working on. So having that connection come through, even though it's not for a specific job, is really important, because I think that's where most of us can say that's where the beginning of the connection starts, is like, oh, what was that product I saw 10 months ago? They were in the firm. It was interesting. Now I got to remember it, and you got to make me be able to remember what that is, so then I can go back when I do get a project and start having you as part of the list that culls down into the actual specification.
That's interesting that it brings to mind two thoughts in succession, and I don't want to lose them because I'm fascinated by myself and them both. The first one is, and maybe this is a question for you, Pat, is especially as the transition from PPG into vitro, I know firms have kind of go-to products that are tried and true, that make an appearance in project after project. So that kind of continuity, the repeat customer, how much of that is a kind of part of your equation when you look at the customer landscape?
Yeah, that's a harder thing to measure with the website, because there's anonymity there. But we try to make it easy. They can call us at any point.
Yeah.
And glass is a complicated material, and it's an important one for aesthetic and design considerations. So they can call us, and we don't. This is more anecdotal than factual, but we have a high percentage of people that like, trust, respect our people on the phone, and they call back. And it's not unlikely to have someone say, I called you 4 years ago, and it's the same person. They're geographically placed, so if an architect's in LA, they're going to get the same person. And hey, I talked to you 4 years ago, and hey, how'd the project turn out? So there's a little camaraderie, which is kind of, in a very highly fragmented industry, it's kind of interesting. So, but yeah, I mean, I think architects are always looking for a lot of different variety of products to use, but then they come back to what's the firm used successfully before, and it worked and performed. So right. There's a little trust and confidence and comfort factor that goes into it as well. So.
And then as we were speaking about the notion that kind of the human interaction often occurs kind of much later in the process, I've also, in tandem, actually had a panel discussion last year in Chicago on product specification. One local architect made the point that I thought was very interesting, especially with kind of the advancement of digital technologies and digital fabrication. As architects begin to almost accrue the means of product production back to themselves, that a new form of much more highly engaged relationship between manufacturer, marketer, and architect is evolving, where it's almost a partnership relationship that would entail far greater interaction than a kind of more traditional, handoff specification. And I don't know if in your practices, if that's the case, where you're looking to a manufacturer and their marketing materials for their expertise almost from the outset of an enterprise.
Well, and I would say, as you all know, as architects, we always see this great product. We're like, that's wonderful. I know you can do these 10 things, but I want to actually do this.
Right.
And, you guys probably hear that all the time. So that's really where that manufacturer comes in key, because we always call and we'll start with an off-the-shelf detail or a product or what it can do. And then we're like, but can we tweak it one more degree to the left? And,
Right.
And how do we do that? And will it work with your product? And then going back to your factory and figuring out if you can do that. And that happens a lot more often than you think, especially with some of the projects that we work on for our clients.
So where I am in my career, I don't have that many occasions to talk to product reps. When I do, it's usually because somebody on the team has just not been able to get the information. And, I've got my set of relationships that go back, and I know if I call Eric, that Eric, in fact, this is a real example. If I called him right now, he will say something like, if he didn't know it right off the bat, he will say, I don't know that, but I know how to get it, and I'll get back to you in an hour. And they will.
Yeah.
And it usually has something to do with, it isn't so much changing materials for me, at any rate. It's knowing something about the performance,
Yes.
or the chemistry that went in to make whatever it is, something like that. And it's actually kind of surprising how many product reps don't actually know what goes into the making of their product.
Right.
Well, it's funny you talk about that, because while the website needs to be well organized for architects, at least with Vitro, I know that their staff is one of our biggest users, of course, to find that information for the architect. So we're trying to serve two masters all at one time, which is why if you were to look at the Vitro site today, we have a traditional navigation and organization, but we have one specifically for the architect as well, because we want to make sure that the information is organized in such a way that no matter who you are, whether you're our staff and our sales team out on the field or the architect coming to the site, you can find what it is that you're looking for and pull it off and access it, use it. Yeah, it's critical. We were talking all about the architect here, but we can't forget that the reps need access to that information instantly too, because you want them to get back to you in an hour.
And I'm sure the architect's one is kind of the dumbed down version that's a little simpler for us to understand.
But very pretty.
Yes,
That's
beautiful.
Oh, absolutely.
I love it. Well, we have about 5 minutes left, so I think this is a good moment to open the discussion up to the audience. I don't know if anyone has any questions for the panel. I'm looking around. Anything we haven't covered?
Well, not that we haven't covered. I was really interested in how you all have looked at that. That's very, very well done. Thank you.
And we can't thank you all for enough for participating, Pat.
Thank you.
Kim and Scott, and it's an amazing team. Jason, Bill, thank you all for making the time
Thank you.
to share your wisdom with our audience.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for having us.
Thanks, Ned.
Thanks.